And this is the practice worksheet for your quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and do one of these problems. And last hour I did number 5. Actually, it was a pretty good one. Let's do number 5. Okay. The quadratic formula, does anybody remember it from the top? Wow, that is highly impressive. Way to go, Kaylee. All right, so the first thing I like to do is, well, first of all, we got to get 0 on one side, right? So don't even decide what your A, B, and C is until you get a 0 on one side. So I'm going to add 7 to both sides, right? I got to undo the minus 7, so I'm going to add 7. Be careful here. Keep it lined up. Put your constant. Boy, this is a terrible plus 7 here. Okay. So I now have my 0 over here. All right, so I keep my negative 3n squared. And I keep my minus 7n, right? And then I have positive 19 plus 7 is positive 26. Okay, now that I have a 0 on one side, I'm going to put in my A is negative 3. It's the coefficient of the squared variable, right? Negative 3. My B is the coefficient of n to the first, which is negative 7. And then my C is 26. Okay, so let's plug that into our x coordinate of the intercept, right? Because that is what that means. So I have x equals negative b. Be careful here. Whenever you have negative numbers, put them in parentheses because you don't want to go through the whole problem and then not get the right answer or have trouble getting the right answer, all because you didn't take a minus, bless you. So always put these negative numbers in parentheses. So our b is negative 7 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So my b again is negative 7. I'm going to put it in parentheses. Squared minus my 4. I even like to put these in parentheses. A is negative 3. And then my C is 26. All divided by 2 times my A, which is negative 3. Okay. Now, I was telling my last class, I have students that like to program their calculators and put this formula in there, and or they like to put the whole thing in the calculator and try to solve it, and they always get these. Many times they get these wrong answers because they don't put parentheses around the entire denominator. Think about PEMDAS, right? You put all of this in your numerator, then you hit that divide by 2. So your calculator is going to divide it by 2, then multiply it by negative 3. You want it to divide by negative 6. So it does all kinds of goofy stuff in there. It's better to do it the way we taught you, right? And that way was to take this discriminant, do that off to the side, and once you find the number, plug it back in there for the discriminant and then work it out. You really should do it that way because it doesn't get rid of all the arithmetic mistakes, but it minimizes it. Okay? So let's do this off to the side. And I have the square root of, well, what's negative 7 squared? 49, good. Minus, now this, you might want to use your calculator. That's quite a bit. 4 times negative 3. What did you get?
Altogether, I got 361.
Oh, okay, yep. I think that's what it is. Times 26 is negative 312. Okay, because I have a double negative, remember that little 2/ rule in pre-algebra? 312 plus 49 is going to be 361. So I have the square root of 361, and isn't that a perfect square? It is? 19? Wonderful. So that equals 19. So I'm going to take that for this whole discriminant here. Comes out to 19. So now I'm going to take that 19 and plug it back in there for the discriminant. Makes this a lot easier, this problem. Huh? Yeah, here I got another double negative, so what happens here? Positive 7. Don't forget your little plus or minus sign in there. In fact, I think, pretty sure that's part of the discriminant. Plus or minus. Now, instead of all of this, see how I got that circled? I figured it out to the side here, and I simplified it to just 19. So I'm going to substitute 19 for the discriminant. All divided by 2 times negative 3. Yeah, negative 6. Good. Now, remember what I told you about that plus or minus sign? That's actually 2 numbers, right? Positive 19 and negative 19. So, I have 2 numbers here. I'm going to split them off. I'm going to have one number up here, and then I'm going to split the other number down here. So the first number I have is 7 plus 19 divided by negative 6. I'm going to go ahead and simplify this. 7 plus 19 is 26 divided by negative 6. Now this can be reduced, and if you want to use your calculators, by all means, go ahead. 26 divided by negative 6. Hit enter. Got a decimal, so hit math, enter, enter. I get negative 13/3. Okay, now I got to do the other number, right? I have 7. This time I'm going to subtract 19 divided by 6. I'm sorry, negative 6. 7 minus 19 is negative 12 divided by negative 6, which is positive 2. So x here equals negative 13/3 and positive 2. Let's take it a step further. What does this mean? X equaled negative 13 thirds and 2.
That could be a vertex.
Well, don't forget, this is each an x coordinate. This is one x coordinate, and this is the other x coordinate, right?
So the x coordinates, I went y0.
There you go, right? So this is an x coordinate of negative 13 thirds, comma 0. It's a point. And then this is a x coordinate of 2, comma 0. Is it hitting you yet? What it is?
It's a trivial solution.
It's a what?
A trivial solution.
Yeah, it's the solution to this equation, right? And what do we remember what I told you about solutions? We call them solutions, x-intercepts, roots. That's why some people call it roots, because they figure it out here with the root. Let's see, it's going to be 2, and negative 13 thirds is what? About 4, little over negative 4? They're my x-intercepts. And because our a is negative, we know that this parabola, now I don't know where it goes, where the vertex is, but it's going to be something like that. Where this is 2, and this is negative 13 thirds. Okay? That's what that means. So you've got 5 problems to do on the quadratic formula from yesterday's lecture, right? And I also gave you guys a review of the different methods that I taught you about how to solve quadratics. And again, when I say solving quadratics, I mean finding these intercept points. Okay? That's what this sheet is, the review of solving quadratic equations. Remember we did the first one we did was solving quadratic equations by factoring, where you would factor. Yeah, let's go ahead and factor one. This is n squared, so I know I'm going to have, I can't take out any common terms. Be careful on that, by the way. Let's see, I have an n here and an n here. Factors of 48, 1 and 48, 2 and 24, 3 and 16, 4 and 12, and 6 and 8. Okay, the sign is a minus sign, right? So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So we're going to be subtracting these factors, and they're going to have to subtract to 2. So I'm looking at my factors. If I'm subtracting the factors, 8 and 6, 8 minus 6 is going to be 2. So I need 8 and 6. I don't have to worry about which one goes where because my coefficient here is 1. So 8 and 6. The only thing I do have to worry about are the signs. See, this is positive 8n. This is negative. Oh, no. We need a negative 8n and a positive 6n to get a minus 2n, right? Okay, so our 6 needs to be positive. Plus 6. Our 8 needs to be negative. Negative. Then we set each one of those factors equal to 0, right? N minus 8 equals 0, or n plus 6 equals 0. Now this one's pretty easy to do because you're just changing the signs, really. So n is going to equal 8, comma, negative 6.
Would it be negative 8? Oh, wait.
No, I'm adding 8 to both sides. Positive 8. Then the second method I taught you guys was by taking the square roots. Now this one was actually kind of easy, right? Where you get the x squared by itself. So you have to get that x squared by itself. In order to do that, I'm going to get this 6 on the other side, right? So I'm going to subtract 6. So I have my 10x squared equals 76 minus 6, 70. Still got to get that x squared by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by the coefficient 10. So I have x squared, 70 divided by 10 is 7. Then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Cancels out that power 2. And my answer here then is, don't forget the plus or minus. Square root is 7. And this is simplified, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so that was the second method. The third method, let's see, the third method was, that's a quadratic formula. Oh, solve by completing the square. Now, I was telling my last class, I think this is the hardest one of them all. Okay? I think completing the square is the hardest one. But sometimes you don't have a choice, especially if the directions say solve by completing the square, right? All right, so I'm going to do number 14, okay? So turn the page. Let's go to 14. And by the way, completing the square, you can only do it if you can get the coefficient of the square term to be a 1. If you can't get that to be a 1, then you can't use this. All right. So again, here's standard form, right? Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And there's a whole big, long process of this. What we have to do is get these two terms by itself first. So number 14, I have the x squared term by itself, so I need to bring this 20x to the other side. So I'm going to subtract 20x from both sides. Now be careful, don't combine those, they're unlike terms, right? Okay, so I have x squared minus 20x. These go away, and I have my 96. Now, I got my squared term and my x to the first term by itself. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to add a perfect square to this to make it a perfect square trinomial, right? Which means I have to add that same number to the right-hand side to make it the same. And the formula for that squared term that I'm going to add to both of them is b divided by 2 squared. That's going to give me my perfect square to add to both sides. Okay, here's my b, negative 20. I'm going to divide it by 2 and then square it. Okay, negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. Then I need to square that, which is 100. I'm going to add 100 to both sides. Now that this is a perfect squared trinomial, it's going to factor to a perfect square binomial. And here's my x. And I'm going to use the base minus 10. So minus 10 squared. 96 plus 100. So good. Okay, now I have to take the square root of both sides to cancel out that power 2. And I get x minus 10 equals, don't forget the plus or minus, square root of 196. And they were kind to us because 196 is a perfect square, right? 14. Okay, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. So my x equals, let's see, positive 10 plus or minus 14, right? Square root of 196 is 14. Now, I'm going to get my two numbers here, right? 10 plus 14 is 24. 10 minus 14, negative 4. So there's my answer. Again, completing the square, I think, is the hardest one of all four of them. Because the fourth one was quadratic formula. Now, if you're ever stuck on an SAT test where you don't have to do a specific method, use the quadratic formula. Because the quadratic formula works for every quadratic that's out there. It's, all quadratics don't factor nice. In fact, there's, very seldom do quadratics factor. Let's put it that way. Taking the square roots, that seems to work pretty good. If you can do that, I would do that. Completing the square, pretty tricky. But quadratic formula works for every one of them. It's a good one. Any questions? So you guys got plenty of work to do, right? Between today and tomorrow. I'll get the reviews printed up, and if you're fortunate enough to whiz through these, I'll give you the review. What's that? I can't say yes because I'm surprised I'm this awake this late in the morning. I was in pretty bad shape. I will see how I feel. It's going to be a hour by hour decision. That's why I'm going to say no.
Straight no.
Yeah, straight no. Yeah.
Hang on a Saturday.